I can't believe it's Thursday again, 6 o'clock. That means one thing. It's Thursday and it's 6 o'clock. It also means that it's the ABC of CBD. Easier to tell which of us is which because my beard and moustache after many years has gone. I don't know who this is, but it's me, what's left of Russ Kane. Now, as I always say, I'm just the passenger on this show, happy to be so. But let's introduce the Count of Cannabinoids, the hunk of hemp. He is, of course, Ollie Mammon.
What's up, guys? Happy Thursday, everybody. 1 week closer to Christmas.
Yeah. Have you worked out what you're getting me yet? Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there. That's all casually.
I don't really understand who is my co-host tonight. As in, I've had this beautiful bearded stallion of a man who's kept me company over the last 58 weeks. And here, now I'm joined by someone with no facial hair.
I don't know.
It's kind of making me feel a little bit rough around the edges.
It's very weird. You know what, man? It's really weird. I look in the mirror and I go, I don't know.
So I had this 3 weeks. Do you remember, like just after Halloween? I also shaved my beard off just after Halloween. And
I'd love to have seen that. I'd love to have seen that.
Yeah, you weren't here because you decided not to do the shows for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Anyway, so over that period,
I was bored.
Every time I looked in the mirror, I was just like, who's looking back at me?
I was in the middle of a virus, but apart from that, it was all going terribly, terribly well.
That's it.
Now, without further ado, I think, as we like to say, it's time to pay the rent.
I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD, a product created by users for users, a product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price.
Boom. Love it.
Love it.
I never get tired of that.
I love that advert. I love the fact I've got my own advert. It's kind of cool.
Of course you got your own advert. Why wouldn't you have your own advert? Right. Enough from me, mister. Over to you.
So, episode 58. I can't believe we've actually got here. Back around. It's amazing that it's done over a full year. So, our special guest today is a very incredible woman by the name of Mags Houston. Mags Houston is the president and the head of Project 21. So as we continue on my journey to medical cannabis, where I will hopefully manage to get legal medical cannabis prescription, we are joined by the current head of Project 21, Ms. Mags Houston. Mags has come on the show to shine some further light on the inner workings of Project 21, the aims, the goals, the outcomes, and what a patient journey actually looks like from within. A few weeks back, we were joined by David Baddock, the CEO of Drug Sciences, the mother organization sitting above Project 21. Drug Sciences focuses on the uses and benefits of non-conventional pharmaceutical drugs as medicine. Project 21 is one small part of this organization, which focuses mainly on cannabis. However, it could be a large part of my journey to a legal medical cannabis prescription. The aim of my journey, the aim of this journey, is to show you all what the actual process of obtaining medical cannabis is like in the UK. Maybe I succeed, maybe I fail, maybe it will be hard, maybe it will be easy. I actually have no idea. That part hasn't really been recorded yet, so I can't even tell you what's going to happen. It's like we've got no idea for how it's going to actually end up. But living the process, showing
will work out very well.
Hopefully, but if it doesn't, at least we have a true.
It'll be good.
But if I end up not getting a prescription, then at least people will understand how the process actually is. But living the process, showing the process for what it really is, it's important to potential patients absolutely everywhere. I personally think that what is putting most medical cannabis users off is the process itself. It seemed to be very expensive. It seemed to be very difficult. Well, over the coming weeks, that's exactly what we're going to find out. We're going to put some truth behind all of the assumptions. One thing you already probably know about me is that I really like the fine details. I like to understand things properly. Why something works the way it does, its greater purpose, what the positives of something are, but also what the potential negatives might be. I like to educate myself on how things work as a whole. As with everything I do, nothing is done in halves. Hence why I brought David on the show a few weeks ago, and now I'm bringing on Mags, because I really want to get a full view of this organization. One view from within is good, but the more opinions we can get about the structure of Project 21 and how it actually operates, it only gives us a more enlightened view of the actual process itself.
And of course, the fact is, Ollie, that your journey is our journey. You know, we're all
Exactly.
traveling with you. You're like the bus driver. We're the passengers on the bus. We're all going the same way to see,
Exactly.
having a look at the view.
And then hopefully we all learn something on the way. Now, like I said, I like to know what's going on around me, the mechanisms and reasons behind an action, an ingredient, a product, a service, or a system. My journey to medical cannabis is no different, and I'm not skipping any details. Why? Because I don't want you guys to be left with any assumptions. I don't want you guys to be left with any guesswork. So we're literally turning over all of the cards in order to kind of get as much information out to you guys as possible. The medical cannabis system in the UK is new. It's 3 years and 2 months old, to be precise. However, Project 21 is proving to be vital to the growth of this new sector. As David Baddick said, Project 21 has a patient-first approach to medical cannabis. Combined with this quest for industry growth and a hope to influence real change for patients everywhere through medical proof and patient data, Project 21, this growing organization, could be the answer to the prayers of people everywhere who are searching for medical cannabis. So let's bring on Mags. Let's have a little chat with her, and let's see if my
Ollie, I'm a bit worried. I was looking in the digital green room just now. I think she was swigging a bottle of vodka. I'm just putting it out there. That's all I'm saying. If she says it's water,
under the bus.
Oh no, it's water. No, okay.
I'm not sure it's quite as exciting as vodka, I'm afraid, guys.
Okay. No. For a minute, I thought you were in the old party
Just
spirit.
to say something, those plastic bottles are incredible because you can empty them and fill them with whatever you want. So I know the label might say sparkling water, but we actually have no idea what's in the bottle. And let us have the mystery. The mystery is so lovely. It's so nice.
I trust our guest. Welcome aboard the ABC of CBD. Welcome to Men's Radio Station. Thank you so much for joining the legend that is Ollie Mammon and the chaos that is me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. I really
before I
appreciate
start asking questions, I just want to say something. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to you for assuming the position you've assumed, because in order to do a job that no one in the history of the world has ever done before is quite a daunting task. And I know we're going to get into that today. And you've got a job that no one in the history of the world has ever had before, which means there's no idiot's guide or handbook to doing your job correctly, and there's no there's no previous experience for you to kind of work upon. You know, Project 21 really is a brand new entity in every sense of the word in the UK. So I just want to say, from patients everywhere and from the community to you, I want to say thank you so much for stepping up to the plate, doing what you've done. I know a lot of patients who have had incredible benefits from Project 21 over the last few years. I know that your patient-focused approach is real, and I know you guys are great. Thank you so much for adopting the role you've adopted, and thank you for everything you've done so far for patients everywhere out there.
Oh yeah, I want to return the thanks and say thank you for your innovative idea of having your journey tracked in this very public way. I think it's a wonderful way of ensuring that people can see, really easily what the process is and follow you on that journey, and hopefully inspire more people to access medical cannabis.
That's what it's all about. The one thing is the PR around companies like you and a lot of the other, you could call it private clinics as well. Around this industry in general, the PR is lacking. So there are so many people who still don't even know that that a medical cannabis system exists in the UK. Police still arrest patients, and when they show them their prescriptions, police laugh. There is so much, you could call it, there's such a lack of information. There is an information void which is around our industry. And I really think it's important for people like you to get the praise they deserve, because there aren't many of you. There really aren't, especially on that legal medical cannabis side, and especially involved in the sort of charity work that Drug Sciences and Project 21 does, and the patient-focused approach, and not just looking at the bottom line dollar bill. I mean, it's incredible. So just wanted to get that out there, and now I'm going to rip you to shreds. You've got your compliments, and now we can.
Can I just come back on a couple of points, Ollie?
Of course.
Before we do so, first off, I just want to say, thanks so much for having me. I want to just correct your pronunciation of the project. So it's Project 2021, not Project 21.
Okay, fine.
You have one job to do, Ollie. One job.
I abbreviate. You know how long it is to say 2021?
No, you made me look stupid.
No,
You
it's
made
the
me-
year that we're living in, Ollie.
I know.
It's the
I'm
year we're
sorry.
living in. So that's why it got its name. So it was called Project 2021 because originally it was set up 2 years ago with the idea that we would have reached our maximum number of patients by the end of this year. So that was the idea. So 2021, it's the word 20 written and then the number 21.
Getting on my nerves.
Sorry,
I'll be honest, she's getting on my nerves.
Live
She's
updating.
annoying me.
Now, Russ, is
What is it? 20 and the number 1?
No, so 20, so TWENTY.
No, I know how to spell 20. Come on.
And then 21 next to it.
There you go. It's in the chat for you, Russ.
There we go.
So just to
Copy and paste.
clarify on that, the original objective of the project was to set up, was to allow better access to patients through Project 2021 by the end of this year, and we wanted to give access to up to 20,000 patients. Now, between the conception of the idea of the project and now a little thing called a global pandemic has occurred, and obviously that put our healthcare system and priorities as both a nation and on a global scale really kind of caused real upheaval, and we could never have envisaged.
It stretched the entire system very thin.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you just think about the media, for example, we've been putting out some really strong press releases as Drug Science this year, and all media want to talk about when it comes to healthcare is COVID. It's been really, really difficult to actually to break through and to get mainstream press attention about something like medical cannabis. That said, there have been some success stories over the past couple of years, and we're really proud of them. One highlight this year being that our patient advocate, Lucy Stafford, who is herself a Project 2021 patient. She is diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which causes her chronic pain. She actually got her case study published in the BMJ, so that's the British Medical Journal, and she's the first person of her kind to actually have her case study published in that journal. So a huge achievement for medical cannabis and for Lucy as well, and for the project. Like really, really good exposure for the project, and hopefully can push us towards, making a difference with the work that we're doing. The other thing that you mentioned was police. And actually, you're quite right. A couple of weeks ago, I had a patient write to me personally and say that sadly, he had been arrested that weekend. Oof. Despite being a medical cannabis patient, and he had his prescription or he had his cannabis on him. Now, I don't know the full details, but I can only imagine he didn't have the original kind of written prescription on him. So when he got this found by the police, he was told, oh no, medical cannabis isn't legal, and was put in a cell overnight, because these police just are not educated enough about the legalities around cannabis still, despite us being 3 years on from cannabis being legalized for medicinal purposes. And that was when it was moved from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2, which deems it as having some therapeutic or medicinal value. So we've still got a long, long way to go. And at Drug Science, one of the things that we aim to be doing over the coming months is to be putting out resources targeted specifically at the police so that we can help educate them. But we would love to be able to work with government to make this happen, rather than having to be doing it all the legwork ourselves, and working with organizations like Release to do it for them, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
We're doing everything that we can, but we can't do it as fast as we would like to.
I get that. Well,
I've got to ask, sorry to jump in, because I think this is important for listeners. And remember, people watching all over the world. He's banged up. He's obviously saying, look, hang on a minute. I've got a legal prescription. They don't know what the heck he's talking about. They shove him in jail overnight. Horrendous. How does he get out? He makes the phone call and a lawyer comes in and says, look, you don't know what you're talking about. It's legal. Is that basically how it works, Max?
So what we would advise from Drug Science is to get in touch with an organization like Release, who are experts in drug law specifically. And from our point of view, of course, yeah, as I say, we want to put out resources both to police and to patients so that they're really, really clear on their rights and can utilize these resources in the moment. I'm not sure of this man's particular story in great detail, but I do know that he was released the next day without any apology from the police.
Of course, you won't get. You never get. You see, that just galls me. I'm looking at this from the outside. It's not like, I'm so sorry, we made a mistake. It's our. No, nothing.
So what we can do is just keep pushing forward as to raising awareness amongst both police and just generally amongst the general public. I think to your point as well, Ollie, around PR and advertising, this is part of the problem because we haven't seen prescriptions on the NHS. We've only seen 3 issued in the last 3 years, and they're all for children with epilepsy.
And they all happened within the first week anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, so they did after a lot of government, a lot of lobbying to government as well. A lot of hard work on the part of those. It's
almost like there was like 3 years of a battle before legalization, which enabled 3 patients to kind of get a legal prescription. And since legalization, there has been zero addition to that. And even like, there are children who are in equally bad states to the 3 the 3 NHS cannabis prescripted children, but they are also not getting facilitated. They're not getting taken care of, which is a big shame, a real big shame. And also, even private prescriptions are being limited to those patients because the amount of doctors who are actually facilitating child cannabis usage is also negligible. It's very sad, very, very sad. We've focused a lot on epilepsy. We've done a lot of episodes on epilepsy. I think we've done like 15 out of our 50 have been on that. Like a third is focused on that subject. And to be honest with you, one of the best stories we heard was from someone called Edward Granger, who's one of your patients. And he is so happy with the system he's got. And like he said, the whole idea that he's no longer suffering in silence, he doesn't have to lie. And he has this ability to actually talk about his real problems with his doctor. What he said to me is quite funny. He said, without Project 21, without Project 2021, he would have zero ability. He would have zero ability to even speak to a doctor because of COVID and all of those limitations which have been forced onto the medical market in the last couple of years. His face-to-face contact with his neurologist has actually been non-existent. And he said that him actually joining the project has not only meant that he gets his legal cannabis prescription, but he actually gets doctor time. And he said that is something beyond everything is so important because he calls his doctor and he will explain that he's having a tonic or a tonic-clonic seizure. And he says, look, I know that this isn't what you need to hear. I think it's to do with my other medicine. I just need to talk to someone. Do you have any advice for me? And the doctor will give him advice. And it's kind of like, that's what doctors are there for. Doctors are there to give us advice. And he finally got it. This poor dude, they've literally cut him open and taken bits of his brain out. And finally, he's getting the, what's it called? You remember Edward, don't you, Cross?
Yeah, I remember the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, being reminded of it just reminds me how, like, oh.
But I'm saying without you guys, he wouldn't have the patient care that he gets now. So that's like part of the reason why I gave you that beautiful hello when you came on is for that. But listen, we're 20 minutes into the show already. I haven't even asked you a question yet. So you know what? Stop with the distractions. Let's start.
No change there then, Ollie Mammon.
How did you actually become the head of Project 21? The last 12 months at the helm, how's it been? What's your actual role at the project, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Like, how did you manage to fall into a position that's never existed previous to you falling into that position?
In one word, it would be dedication, because I came from a very different world. I came from the world of advertising, and I worked for some of the top agencies in the UK over the last 10 years on massive brands from BT Broadband to Guinness. And during the latter part of that time, I became interested in alternative therapies, treatments that are out there to treat mental health conditions. The reason being that my best friend suffers with very severe depression, PTSD, and OCD. Those are her kind of diagnosed illnesses, whether or not you believe in diagnostic labels. And she tried every every tablet, every pill, every antidepressant, benzo, SSRI under the sun from the age of 8 years old. And they just didn't work. And if they did work a bit, they would come with horrendous side effects that would then require her to take more medication. And suddenly
To
you're faced
counteract
with
those side effects, presumably. Max.
exactly, Russ,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And this is the story that I hear from so many of our patients, that they've become addicted to opioids or just psychiatric medications over the years because they haven't been well enough informed at point of prescription of the dangerous side effects and of the long-term dependency that can come with being on a lot of these medications. And then when they choose to try and come off them, they discover that they are actually dependent on them and have to go through months, sometimes years of withdrawal. So my avenue into this work has really been in seeking out something different for my friend and for people like her. And that meant that sorry, go for it.
Yeah, just to add that, because as soon as you mentioned that, so you mentioned 8 years old, and you mentioned anxiety, OCD, and a couple other ones in the middle, but they're the two which shot in my brain because they're similar things of what I deal with my Tourette syndrome. And the 8 years old is also like I was 6.5, 7 when I was diagnosed. Now, firstly, I wanted to ask a question. Your 8-year-old at the time she was 8. How old is she now?
She is 34.
So she's my age. Okay, so it's the same. This is the argument I've been giving for years. 25 years ago, okay, 25, 26 years ago, I'm going to swear here. No one had any fucking idea what Tourette syndrome actually was. All right. And I remember going to doctors. And I mean, they wanted to institutionalize me. They thought I was possessed by the devil. I mean, like they
didn't say that. Come on. I can't let you say that about doctors.
I'm not saying they said that, but I'm saying that was the analysis. The analysis is that they didn't know how to analyze me. Now, what
I get that, but they didn't think you were possessed by the devil.
In today's world, mental health is something we've discussed. There's a minutiae of fine print out there. There is information out there which we can seek. There is education out there. There are experiences. We know about mental health now. We know about things like Tourette. We know about things like OCD. When she was 8 years old, they didn't know. They just see a child who's not all right. What they want to do is they want to make that child okay. So what they do is they open that child's mouth and they throw as many medicines down that throat as possible. Now, I'm very fortunate that I've got a very, very, very aggressive dad who basically turned around and said, if you zombify my son, I will kill you. Which kind of meant that doctors,
the mighty Claude,
the mighty Claude was very restricted. He didn't want to put me on the Ritalins and those zombifying, mind controlling drugs, which basically take away a child's soul and a child's personality. My whole life, I've always had that in the back of my mind. I don't want to lose who I am. I want to kind of get a handle on my problems, but I don't want to lose who I am. I like who I am. I like the fact that I have a brain that's compassionate and empathetic and thinks about a million things a minute. I actually kind of like the bubbles, like I call it the bubbles. It's that like energy, excitement inside of me, which isn't uncontrollable. It's actually what drives me. So I love my bubbles. I've always loved my bubbles. And it's something I speak about with all of my doctors about the fact that I never want to lose them. And if I lose my bubbles, I lose my superpowers. And the whole point is that if I don't like my OCD, like I explained this last week on the show, it takes me about 40 minutes to leave the house between the locked doors and the stove and the locked doors and the stove again. And then again, do you know what I mean? It just drives me. I understand that. I understand that plague. But fact of the matter is, if I had to choose between living with that plague or living without my bubbles, I would choose the plague. And to have my bubbles, I would always choose to keep my bubbles. Why? Because I wouldn't be me without it. So I can really empathize with your friend on her journey when she's 8 years old, trapped in the middle of a rock and a hard place with nowhere to go. And she probably went down the other route. She went down the route where they gave her all the drugs which didn't work. Whereas because
she knew no better and she was too young to make her own decisions.
Exactly. And I'm very fortunate that I had that beautiful lunatic of a man behind me, forcing, making sure that I didn't have that on my shoulders.
No, it's very it's called being a dad. It's called being a dad, and it's called loving your son. And it's
a lot of parents listen to their doctors
because they get yes, of course they do, Ollie, because we've always been brought up, as I'm sure Mags and I clearly had a similar background. My background was advertising and marketing all the time.
You both wear glasses. You both have very similar
I don't have to wear glasses.
You both look like superheroes.
Where's he gone? Okay. Where's he? Let's find it. Oh, there you are. Yeah, it's interesting. When I had some problems, which I'm not going to go into, I was told by the medical profession, yeah, we can do X, Y, and Z, but when we put you back together again, you may not be the same person. I said, well, I don't want anything touching with my creativity. Comes back to your advertising career, Mags.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'm winning all these awards for my writer. I don't want that mucked up. So I'll put up with how I am. I totally understand what you're saying, Ollie. And I'm only saying that not because about me. I couldn't care less about me. I'm just
love you.
want you.
I love
want
you,
you
Ross.
to.
I care
Yeah,
about
stop
you.
it. Stop it. I want you to understand that I'm empathizing. It's not something which is completely, foreign or alien to me. I get that you do have a choice. I understand exactly what you're saying. We can get rid of this, but we can't guarantee how you will be. You won't be the same Ollie Mammon. You won't be the same Russ Kane. I didn't want that. Because if you take that element away from us as individuals, you don't know who you are anymore.
Exactly.
It's really key. It's a very important point you've made, Ollie. I hadn't thought about it before properly.
But it's
And
quite... Sorry, go on, Mags. Talk.
To build on that, I think it does refer back to our point before around the fact that medical cannabis is allowing so many patients to come off of all of these drugs, which are doing, God knows what, because for a lot of the time there isn't a heap of long-term research or long-term evidence with these drugs.
Is that true?
And medical
I'm
cannabis
sorry to jump in. I have to act as devil's advocate because Ollie's got the passion. I have to have the kind of cool head. Oh. You can see how desperate we are. So is that really true? Is that really true? Because what I don't want to do, Mags, and I think what you're doing is fantastic. All right. And I've come from this stone cold. I'd never met Ollie before. Bizarrely, we've still never met. 8 weeks later, we've never met.
Wow, is that right? You never met?
Yeah.
He doesn't like me. He doesn't like me.
We've never met each other. I've managed to avoid it. Here's the thing. I don't want this whole, conspiracy nonsense about big pharma and that, without certain pharmaceuticals, a lot of people would be in terrible trouble.
Absolutely,
but my position, I'm not speaking on behalf of the radio station, I'm just speaking as me, is that I think these are compatible, and what you're doing and what Ollie's doing can live side by side. And if we can get rid of some of the pharmaceuticals because the natural stuff works, that is terrific. That's a win-win situation. But I don't want to be like some radical and just slag off pharmaceuticals so they don't do anything and they're sitting in a secret lair in a volcano waiting for James Bond going, ha. It's not like that.
I hear you, Russ. I think my frustrations with certain areas of the pharmaceutical industry are from hearing very personal stories and some very tragic stories. So yeah, I completely hear what you're saying. Interestingly, this year there were a couple of updates to the NICE guidelines. So those are the guidelines that are like the official health guidelines, NHS guidelines for our doctors. One of them being for pain medicine back in May, where the guidelines changed to advise around kind of more exercise and a more kind of holistic approach to helping to treat pain rather than just going for kind of the opioids and the medicated route. So things are kind of moving in that direction, I would say, anyway. And likewise, there's been kind of an update to the guidelines recently that kind of keeps moving things in that direction. I think my point really around things like antidepressants are that a lot of the time they are prescribed for a shorter term than they are actually, and they end up being used for, and in partnership with doing other things in life, such as maybe increasing exercise, maybe increasing social activity, and making other lifestyle changes that can complement the medication, so that you don't then become dependent on them for very, very long term, which does often happen. But I do feel like we're deviating slightly here from the project, and I am
also. I just want to say something quickly, just in defense of Mags. It's very important that, and I once again, Russ, jump down my throat if you want, but remember that we are deviating a little bit. So anecdotal evidence, evidence influences change. So when you get this anecdotal evidence from a patient who states that something's not right, it starts the questioning of what could be right for them. And what happens is every patient deserves salvation from their pain. every patient deserves to find that moment of happiness, that moment of clarity where they no longer suffer what they're suffering. If that's with pharmaceuticals, good for them. But if they suffer from pharmaceuticals and they provide a feedback that doesn't work for them, it needs to be listened to. And companies like Project 21 are surrounded by the anecdotal evidence of patients who have not had success through the pharmaceutical methods, which might work with other people. And therefore, Mags is kind of at the forefront of that. And therefore, I understand why it takes precedent in her mind. And it's very important that it's, we are from where we come. So it's very important that she comes from this environment where she's hearing this information. I understand why she brings it up. But I also understand you, Russ. That was quite nice, right? Let's move on. Anyway, so your first experiences with medical cannabis then, were they with your friend? Like the first time you saw medical cannabis?
Not at all.
So
no,
what
so
was
when
your first experiences of medical cannabis, like actually seeing medical cannabis work? What was the first thing that really, that changing point in your life, the story you read, the story you heard, the friend of yours who tried it, that everyone's got one, and I assume you must also.
Well, actually, this is a bit off piece, but my way into medical cannabis was through the world of psychedelics and psychedelic drug research. And it really opened up my mind to the concept that we've actually been missold a lot of information around drugs since the war on drugs, since Nixon's war on drugs in the 1970s and the Misuse of Drugs Act. And through my own reading around the topic of psychedelic drug research, of which there's been loads over the last 10, 15 years, I'm sure you're aware, I became aware of the medical cannabis space as well. I suppose what I'm saying is it shifted my my perception about what had been very stigmatized drugs. We've all grown up being told that smoking weed is bad. Now, smoking
Russ is a prime example of this. Russ started this show saying he wouldn't try medical cannabis, and 3 weeks ago he was like, if he needed it, he would try it. So I mean, that's the whole point. I completely agree with that whole idea of opening eyes and that idea of stigma changing. I think it happens. It's happening more and more and more. Isn't it, Russ?
I'm listening to Mags, Ollie.
Good. Mags, carry on. I'm going to stop.
I'm listening to what she has to say with words of wisdom and experience. Carry on.
Russ, is ever so kind of you. So through that reading and that I suppose energy that I had from my friend, it brought me to the work that drug science does. Now, drug science is the UK's leading charity that advocates evidence-based drug policy. And medical cannabis and psychedelics and like harm reduction, safe injection units, like this is all stuff that drug science is working really, really
Sorry,
hard.
what was the last one, Max? What was the last one you said?
Safe drug consumption rooms. It's another area. So for around harm reduction.
Right.
And medical cannabis is one of the kind of key pillars of drug science's output. And it was where the gap was at the time in terms of who they were, like, what they needed to focus on, and where they had a position to be filled. And the more I read about medical cannabis, the more I thought, do you know what? This will be the thing to change people's minds about all of this stigma that we've been sold around drugs over the last 50 years. So not only will we be changing people's minds about cannabis, and there's a lot of stigma, particularly about cannabis, but also around psychedelics and their therapeutic value for mental health in the future as well. And going back to your original question, Ollie, in terms around the stories that I've heard and who's really made me realize that this stuff really works. As you can imagine, over my last year with drug science, I have spoken to a lot of patients about their experiences. And one patient in particular always sticks in my mind, and that's Claire. Now, Claire is in her late 20s. She's from near where I'm from in Scotland. And
Are you Scottish?
I grew up in Scotland. Yeah, can you not tell
Why
by my
don't you
very
have an accent? Why don't you have an
accent?
accent?
She's putting on a voice for radio. It's a radio voice. She always
It's my
talks
radio
like
voice, Ellie,
that.
obviously,
She always
yeah.
says, hello, Mugs, Houston there.
You like you know Russ does what Russ loves the Scottish. Okay,
I do,
he does Fringe every year. Where is he that way? He does Fringe every year.
Yeah, no, don't. We haven't got Mags for
He's
long.
a baller. This one, he loves it up there. Sorry, carry on.
No,
So
I do love it up there.
She's the Scottish girl.
So Claire was diagnosed in her late teens with fibromyalgia, a year or so after falling off a horse, and she thinks that might have been related to the diagnosis.
Wow.
And then into her 20s, she was then diagnosed with endometriosis. This is after a lot of back and forth with doctors who didn't believe her, who were very sexist in the way she feels, in the way that she was treated. And she is one of these patients who was put on heaps and heaps of drugs, got loads of different medications. The list is ridiculously long. And when she was at university, she tried cannabis for the first time, and she told me that first time she tried it, it was like it took all the pain away, and it changed everything for her.
Wow.
And from that moment, she knew that this was a medication. This wasn't just this wasn't something for recreational use. This was something that could really, really help her be able to transform her life and live a normal life. It's enabled her to go to university and to form this kind of what we would call a normal life, where she's not housebound, and she can go out with friends and be a normal 20-something girl living her best life. And now she's a Project 2021 patient with a legal medical cannabis prescription. She doesn't have to be worried about being caught by police.
I bet she is the coolest girl at her university, right? I mean, like you can imagine that at the dorms. All right, Claire's just got her delivery. Let's go say hello. I can imagine that.
That's not what we want to hear. You're ruining it.
She's now graduated. She's hoping to apply for a PhD, looking at this research in more detail in the future, and aiming to help more people like herself.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work with endometriosis.
The Suicide Crisis Centre in Scotland. So she works with people in mental health every day and gives back to people like her who have suffered. So the work she's doing is incredible, and I can't thank her enough for helping to spread the word about Project 2021.
I would love to get her on the show. If you could put us in contact, I'd love to get her on the show. I'd love to have that talk, because also she's young, so she started her medical journey younger than a lot of people out there, especially legally younger than a lot of people out there. So I would love to know from her perspective how it is being a legal cannabis patient at the age of 20. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty.
Max, can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
you're the grand fromage in this area, and you used the phrase that. She knows what. She's an educated woman, for God's sake.
Just translating.
Stop it. You don't. Right. You use the phrase that it rankles with me now. I don't mean with you. I mean with the phrase, the war on drugs. I used to be all for it, I have to say. And my view is, I really think, because I'm not older than you two, but my point now is, when are we going to accept it's lost? We lost this war. We lost this war so decades ago.
Yeah, Reagan lost the war when he started it, right?
No, it was Nixon who started it.
Nixon started it. Reagan lost it.
It was Nixon when he got, and Elvis Presley went in. But the joke was Elvis was doped off of his face for all the photo shoot opportunity. It was neither here nor there. Do you think the war on drugs should be, we should look at it again?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but the government released its new 10-year plan yesterday around kind of the plans for tackling drug crime and moving forward drug policy for the next 10 years. That was released yesterday. And I think, in a nutshell, all we've seen from criminalizing drugs and people who take drugs over the last 50 years is increased crime in drugs. It's not solving the problem. I think we need to look at countries like Portugal, where they have really seen success through decriminalization of drugs. So drugs are controlled, but they are decriminalized, so you won't face a criminal a criminal record if you're caught in possession. So Portugal have seen their drug crimes plummet in comparison with the UK, where ours have increased by 45% since 1998. I believe that was the stat that I read yesterday. I'm not usually one for stats, but that's one that's fresh in my head.
I just look at it in a holistic way, and I'm glad you've said this. Because I just look at it and think, all you're doing with this is putting money in the hands of criminals. To put aside the moral side of it, and let's not get into that because I want to get back to you. It's important. But you're putting money into the hands of criminals. They're not paying any tax. There's a lot of violence attached to it. You need to get rid of that aspect.
And then what happens is patients and users of non-conventional drugs, for whatever reason they use them, are all at risk. Because that's as soon as what happens. As soon as a market's illegal, there's risk both ways. You know, you
don't want to mess with these people. These are not nice. These are not nice people.
Also, there's no transparency for the end user. There's no consistency for the end user. Reliability doesn't mean anything. Customer services means nothing. And we live in an industry. We're building and supporting an industry that doesn't actually care or support us. And as people who use compounds, for whatever reasons we use them, we deserve a bit of structure to the system providing us those compounds. For example, we all deserve that branded consistency which we can rely on. What happens if you buy a orange juice which is freshly squeezed and it's no label on it and something goes wrong? You've got nowhere to go back to. You buy a Tropicana that's got a plaster in it, you're going to become a millionaire and you'll get what you need out of it. There's a bit of there's a bit of reliability behind the product. Companies like Project 21, companies like the medical cannabis clinics and stuff like that, they are offering us somewhere to turn when things go wrong. And that's what it's all about. It's not about a different way to buy. It's a different cloak of security, which you have as a patient. You're no longer alone. You're no longer a criminal. You're no longer in the wrong. You are officially in the right. And that's quite special.
Can I say on that, Ollie? So firstly, you keep calling Project 2021 a company. We're not a company. We are an observational study.
It was a leading comment for you to do that. I've opened up the next question.
Well, then
you're so clever. You're like the David Frost of cannabinoids.
Like that.
Just want to make sure that we're using the right language to describe the project, just so people don't think that we are a company. So Drug Science is a charity. We run solely off donations, and we are completely independent. We don't take sponsorships from companies. And Project 2021 is our observational study in medical cannabis. It's the largest study of its kind in Europe at present, and we're very, very proud of that. And as I said at the start, we are looking to get towards 20,000 patients. And what I mean by an observational study is we don't actually give clinical advice. We don't advise on dosing. We don't advise on anything to do with prescribing. That is all done by the clinics who have partnered with us. So if you go on the Drug Science website and you click on Project 2021, you'll see that we've got our clinics all listed there, and it's up for the patients to choose their clinic and to make contact themselves. So essentially, we have provided the framework in which we can in which the study can operate.
You don't actually provide advice to patients either, do you?
No, and unless they come to us directly and ask something specific, we can then signpost, but we cannot give clinical advice. That would go against the protocol and the ethics of the study, and would make it not observational any longer.
So when we had Philip Anthony Bevington on the show, he was actually telling Philip Anthony Bevington is a patient through you. But when we asked him, so where did you source your medical cannabis? Because basically Philip, 81-year-old man, kidney failure, doctors told him he's going to die, starts consuming cannabis, keeps himself alive. Doctor then looked at him, how can you consume cannabis? You're going to die. One of those stories. Police end up knocking on his door. He says, yes, I'm growing cannabis because he's an honest Quaker of a man. He doesn't have a lying bone in his body. Police then came in, arrested him. He had a court date. He had this, he had that. Actually, he ended up getting a private prescription through you guys. Now, what does that actually mean? Because this is going to move on to my next question. First of all, you've answered a lot with that leading comment. You answered a lot. I'm really happy about that. But what do you guys actually do? So what's actually? So let's say I'm a patient. I've approached Project 21. you're not actually going to be my doctor. You're not actually going to be my. So, like, what does the patient-led experience with Project 21 actually look like? What am I expecting?
Yeah, I think it's really
the point
important
of
to
you
make.
being here. What am I actually going to be expecting?
Yeah, I think it's really important to clarify exactly what someone gets through being with Project 2021 versus not being with Project 2021. So everyone is at liberty to go to a private clinic to get a medical cannabis prescription. As you mentioned already, there's severe limitations in terms of childhood epilepsy. But if we're talking about a couple of the major conditions that are currently prescribed for with medical cannabis in the private sector, those would be chronic pain and anxiety disorders. And they're huge umbrella terms under which lots of different conditions will sit. Somebody who wants to go through Project 2021 are going to be benefiting in two ways. First off, they're going to be getting subsidized medical cannabis through the project. And the reason for that is in setting up this framework, Drug Science has partnered with 5 different licensed producers. So they are producers of cannabis. And those licensed producers have provided funding to allow the project to run, to allow us to collect and analyze the data that we get from it. And in return, they are getting that data on their products, and that data is incredibly valuable to them. Now, for the patients, the great thing is that those producers have agreed to subsidize the cost of their products. So if a patient is with Project 2021, they are getting a reduced price on their cannabis prescriptions, which anyone who's looked into medical cannabis prescriptions will know they can be very high, especially if you're going to be receiving multiple products a month. So you might not just be prescribed one oil or one flower, which is your traditional weed format a month. You might be prescribed 2 or maybe 3 or 4 products a month, and so the cost can start racking up when you consider that alongside the cost of consultations, which unfortunately in the private sector are not free. However, we're doing everything that we can through Drug Science and through the project to bring those costs down, and we're really, really pleased that over the last 2 years we've seen exactly that happen. We have really encouraged competition when it comes to the cost of prescriptions. So now there are products outside of T21 which are quite competitive with our prices, and we're proud of that. You know, we're not here to be in competition. We're here to provide better access to patients, and if we're ticking that box, we are happy as Larry. So that's great. But the other key thing that we're doing, and the other benefit that patients are getting from being part of the project, is they are contributing their data to the evidence pool. And so they're moving us towards that ultimate goal of changing policy, updating those nice guidelines to support doctors in prescribing medical cannabis for conditions such as pain, such as anxiety, cancer-related pain. There are many different conditions, Tourette's being one of them, as you know, Ollie. We're moving policy closer to that point so that NHS prescriptions become a real thing, because right now they are not. Right now, prescribers do not feel confident, they don't feel educated, they don't feel supported by their peers, and they are not prescribing on the NHS. It's just not getting through. So if we can gather the data that we need to change policy, to influence politics, although politics, in my view, shouldn't have anything to do with healthcare, but that's just the world that we live in, then that's our job done. And we will keep going until we have increased NHS access for everyone in the UK.
Interesting. You want to say something, Russ, or should I ask questions?
Please carry on. I'm riveted by this.
Fine. So I've got a question. So you said that you've partnered up with 5 licensed suppliers, 5 licensed producers.
Yes.
How many other producers are there in the UK? Or how many other producers are there to facilitate supply in the UK?
There are lots of different producers in the UK. I don't have an exact number for you, but we certainly get approached regularly by producers asking if they can join the project. But we have a contract with our current producers, and that was made 2 years ago. And they have agreed they are the producers for the project, and they're the ones getting the data on their products for the time being.
So now the other
what
suppliers,
I would say is sorry.
And then the other suppliers outside of those 5. Are they doing anything with their data? So let's say, for example, I assume that there are other suppliers out there supplying through other clinics, also gathering very valuable data. which the project's not paying attention to because you're not affiliated? Is that like how many patients in the UK operate completely away from you guys, and how much data is slipping through your hands?
So the really cool thing about the way we're set up is if a patient is prescribed another medical cannabis product that they can be prescribed by a doctor at one of our clinics, we can collect that data, and we can put that into T21. The only difference is they're not benefiting from our subsidized rates. So we're collecting data on all medical cannabis products, not just the ones on our own formulary, on our own product list. There are also, there's other data collection going on in the UK, but Project 2021 is the biggest. And we think that if we can try and gather as much data as possible, the evidence is in the quantity, isn't it? In that case, that's going to get people's attention. So we're now at 2,000. We're now at 2,000 patients, which is an incredible achievement. But we know there are thousands more that could benefit from being on the study.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. But another thing which you guys have, which is very good, you've got Professor Nutt and you've got Professor Barnes, which is pretty incredible. Which is pretty incredible. Absolutely. Yeah. And they really are. I mean, in terms of parts of the foundation of this greater structure we're all building. I mean, like Professor Nutt is right. I'm not saying he's like, but he is basically the foundation of all of this outside of conventional medicine discussion. And Professor Barnes has been on the forefront of cannabis discussions for 20 years, if not more, 23 years. I think he was involved in GW in 94 or 96. So I mean, he's been doing this for a long time. So you definitely have the you could call it, what's the word?
Expertise.
The expertise, the prestige. You definitely have the prestige of them too. But I was just curious. It was one of those things I was wondering. Now I've got a question for you. What is the success rate for applicants? Like, how many people actually get turned away? Because this is something which we brought up last week on our show with Tim Henley, and he said to me, actually, they make a point of refusing quite a few people. And I was like, what do you mean? They go, well, they don't actually want people to get this stuff. It was Tim Henley. He's an advocate, but he's not. He's got a very realistic view of the system, and if something's not right, he'll just call it and say something's not right. And I basically asked him the question. I go, well, how many people through Access Canna do you see being rejected from the system or not passing through? What's the success rate for applicants? And he says, actually, quite high. And I just wanted to ask you guys, have you, through your system, through the multitude of doctors and having a bit more of a logical process which patients go through in order to find what they need, do you find that the success rate through Project 21 is a lot higher, or do you find that there are still a lot of patients who don't seem to make the cut?
There are definitely, a lot of patients that won't get through, but the website that we have for drug science makes the eligibility criteria very, very clear. And there are two key things there. They have got to have been diagnosed with a condition that is, up until now, it's actually been a range of 8 different conditions. The main ones I've already mentioned: chronic pain and anxiety, and Tourette's, and MS, PTSD. We've got a range of 8 conditions, and we recently added to it actually a couple of months ago by adding ADHD to that list.
No, I've got that as well. That's cool. I've got so much of these things. I mean, literally,
I'm just showing off.
Like 6 of 8. Like literally, 6 of 8.
You're like the bloke who goes to Costco, who wants to buy some toilet paper, ends up spending £1,000 and comes out with a TV. This is you.
That's basically me, and I've got everything, literally everything.
Everything. What you got?
If I don't get a prescription, I'm going to be so upset.
I'll have some of that as well.
But we find that with a lot of patients, Ollie, actually, and as we look at the data, that a lot of patients will obviously have one of those primary conditions, but actually in terms of secondary conditions, there can be, well over 10 other conditions. And the beauty of cannabis, as I'm sure you well know, is that cannabis can treat so many different things at the same time because of it's a plant. It's got all these different parts to it that do different things that we're only just starting to uncover and to realize. We've done so much research about CBD and THC. What about all the other components to cannabis? That's
something I wanted to bring up to you. So for your friend, the endometritis girl, so actually CBC is legal in the UK. She should try CBC. CBC is it's very, very, very good for gut related issues. Okay, and areas around that. It's actually it's my go-to cannabinoid for endometriotis. The way I will actually produce it is I'll create like a very, very concentrated drops with an MCT oil or a different sort of carrier oil. Avocado oil is very good. Black seed oil is also very good, especially for endometriotis. And you take a couple of drops to the belly button, and it should do very good things for her. For her fibromyalgia as well, because it's nerve related. The amount of nerve endings at the bottom of a belly button is it's astronomical. There's a nerve ending for every other nerve ending in your body. It's an amazing access point for cannabinoids. And another thing is right there on top of the endometriotis. I mean, like if you could put a button on where endometriotis is, it is basically just beneath your belly button. So if there is a way of you trying that with her, I'm sure it would actually do wonders for her.
Well, it's not for me to prescribe. So prescribing advice
it's not prescribing because it's legal. It's legal. So
you can chat to her about it on air, hopefully, if we can get her on the show.
It's just to try it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a conversation. It's also one of the things I've worked with some of my nearest and dearest. It's my go-to for them when they come up to me and say, "I've got this problem." It's my go-to concoction because it's so basic.
That's amazing. And I think, it's an example of how we do need to look at the other components in cannabis.
Minor cannabinoids are so important. Also, terpenes are very important as well. The direct.
Yeah, I wanted to mention about terpenes actually, that on our formulary, so that's our product list that we subsidize for Project 2021. One of the things we want to do is ensure that our patients are aware of what is in the cannabis product that they're taking. And similarly, that we can ensure that doctors are clear on what it is that they are prescribing and learn then from the experiences of their patients. We're such a new industry that we need to ensure that the doctors are learning as they go, as well as obviously doing all the upfront education, of which there are plenty of courses and modules out there that they can do now. I'm pleased to say, and we signpost clinicians all the time to the best training, but patients are calling out to know what it is that they're taking. And as we were saying at the start, that's what you don't get through the illicit market. You might think that your dealer is giving you the best quality high THC flower, but you're just taking their word for it at the end of the day. And what we make sure that patients have access to are information leaflets about the products they're being prescribed. So they
you
can
actually produce like certificates of analysis and stuff like that. So to actually produce a COA.
I just want to make this. Let me make this clear. You said in one of the earlier shows, like almost a year ago, Ollie, to try and educate me to start with. Let's say you walk into your local pharmacy, Boots, doesn't matter what it is, Superdrug, whatever, and you buy some Nurofen. I'm using that as an example. Other brands are available. Your assumption, quite rightly, is that every packet of Nurofen, Paracetamol, whatever it might be, flu thing, it's the same. There is a consistency. Going through an illegal route, you have none of that. It's Russian roulette in many ways. And I can't see how anyone in their right mind can endorse that. So what Mags is doing and what you do, Ollie, I think is absolutely of paramount importance. I just wanted to remind the listeners that, all over the world, that's what it's about. Imagine going into your chemist, buying some Nurofen, but you had no idea what happened to be in that packet. Could be anything.
It ends up that your Nurofen has actually got oxycodone in it, and it destroys you for the next 3 months.
You'd never do it. You wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, quite rightly.
And
we've got less than 3 minutes. Mags, the floor is yours.
Yeah, you've got 2 minutes left, Mags. You might as well close us up. But I'm saying that's the transparency you guys get with Project 21, yes. Project 2021, and that's why I'm a big advocate of you guys and a big advocate of the patient-focused approach which you guys are doing. 2 minutes, your floor. Let's go.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Yeah, so I was speaking just there around conditions that we accept patients for, and I'm really proud to say that actually now we're going to open it up outside of just those 8 conditions that we've had listed for so long, and we're going to open the project up to cover any condition that any of our registered clinics are prescribing for. So, for example, if you're receiving your medical cannabis prescription for diagnose insomnia, then you can receive a cannabis prescription through Project 2021 if the clinic deem you eligible. The other thing that the clinic might ask for when they're going through the eligibility criteria with you is they might ask that you've been on 2 previous forms of medication or therapies, treatment options to treat that condition, and that they haven't worked. So therefore, the medical cannabis becomes a second line option rather than the first thing that they tried. You mentioned a bit ago in our conversation that this patient with epilepsy had to undergo brain surgery before actually being given a medical cannabis prescription. And this is a really extreme but very sadly true example of how medical cannabis is not considered a kind of a first line treatment, and we would love to see that change going forward. It's not a mandatory of Project 2021 to have tried previous medications, but it might be mandated by the clinic that you choose. So I just want to just clarify for everyone listening the simple process of joining the project. Please go on the Drug Science website and click on Project 2021. There you can read all about how to join. You can choose a clinic. You can contact them there depending on what condition you have, and they will take you through the whole process from that point onwards. And you shouldn't have to be in contact with us at Drug Science. That's why we've set up the framework this way, so that it just kind of works itself and we can collect your data every 3 months and hopefully be a minor inconvenience as you receive your subsidized prescriptions.
Can I thank you for your eloquence? Can I thank you for being so articulate? And thank you for being a cool head in an area where people get very passionate, which is great, but hot-headed doesn't ever help the conversation.
I know what you mean, Russ.
You know what I mean? It's like, it puts me, I'll be honest with you, Mags, it puts me right off, and Ollie knows people I'm talking about. And Mags Houston, head of Project 2021, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure having you on the show. Ollie, it's been Ollie, what can you say? It's been great.
Thank you both so much for inviting me on the show. I've really enjoyed it.
Before you go, 2 things. One, would you consider coming back and going through this again as and when things progress for you?
I would absolutely love to. Okay. And I'm really excited to talk more about the findings that we've found so far with the project, of which there are many, and they're really exciting.
And if you would spread the word about the ABC of CBD exclusive on Men's Radio Station, that would be great, because it was Ollie's baby. I'm just a passenger, and I think he really deserves it. Thank you so much. We will be back same time next Thursday, 6 o'clock. Until then, try and stay out of